am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. This week, NBC aired the first 2 episodes of Night Court, a sequel series to the 1980s iconic show by the same name. These days, anytime a revival, a sequel series, or a soft reboot is announced, the cynic in me can already imagine the type of misguided creative directions the project may take to seemingly fit into today's social climate. That's because whether it's a beloved movie franchise, an animated show, or a beloved sci-fi series, Hollywood has become so obsessed with trendy agendas in recent years that it's basically destroyed almost anything in its path. And in most cases, when it comes to these type of revivals, whatever magic an old IP once had simply can't be recaptured or recreated. Certainly not by the type of amateurish, creatively bankrupt activists that seem to dominate Hollywood productions these days. That's why when NBC said that it was bringing back the likable and memorable 1980s sitcom Night Court, my expectations were immediately set to low. For those of you who aren't familiar, the original 80s Night Court show was about the night shift at a Manhattan criminal court presided over by quirky judge Harry T. Stone. Much like other comedies of its era such as Taxi and WKRP in Cincinnati, this was a typical workplace sitcom featuring an ensemble cast of defined comedic characters, usually tethered to one specific location. Reviving a show like this was always going to be tough, especially since 3 of the main cast members had passed away in recent years. In addition, it wouldn't make much sense that any of these people would still be working the same night shift at the same court after all of these years. To further complicate things, as odd as it sounds, comedy has become too safe and too politically correct these days. Back in the day, Night Court's humor was rather edgy and raunchy, allowing for inter-office romantic tensions and other, naughty situations. But in 2023, all of this is considered unacceptable. So what, if anything, would a new show have to offer? Well, now that I've watched the first 2 episodes of the new Night Court sequel series, I finally have some answers. In the new show, Harry T. Stone's daughter, played by The Big Bang Theory's Melissa Rauch, is the newly appointed judge of the same Manhattan criminal court her father presided over in the 80s. Much like the original show, the other cast members are bailiffs and lawyers and other court personnel. The only original cast member to currently appear on the show is John Larroquette as Dan Fielding. As far as the plot goes in the first few episodes, it's pretty straightforward and simple. Abby Stone, daughter of the late Harry Stone, is just starting her new position as the Night Court judge. As Abby gets settled into her new job and starts getting to know her colleagues, her public defender abruptly quits, leaving her to look for a quick-fix replacement. Knowing his work history with her father, Abby visits a now older, grumpier Dan Fielding, who has recently lost his wife, or maybe she's left him. It's not really clear. After reminding him of his past history with her father, Abby asks Fielding for his help at Night Court and to consider filling the role of public defender. Dan Fielding reluctantly agrees to return to work there, but his new role as defender rather than prosecutor is something that is taking him time to adjust to. During the first few episodes, you see a few random cases, but the main focus is really the interaction between Abby and Fielding. As with most of the reviews on this channel, I will go over what I did like and then what I didn't like. Number 1. John Larroquette. Although in our current times, acting awards in Hollywood don't mean all that much, but back in the 80s, Larroquette won 4 Emmy Awards for this specific role as Dan Fielding. It's really no surprise that he can still comfortably slip into an older and grumpier version of his original character, Dan Fielding. Even at age 75, the moments where he's on screen are pretty much the best moments of the show. His mere presence elevates it, and seeing him again in this role feels like seeing an old acquaintance. In addition, he's still even able to generate some laughs solely based on his acting and delivery, which is very commendable. Number 2. The set. Watching this show, I could immediately tell that some care has been put into recreating the original sets of the show. The court itself, the judges' chambers, the hallways, and the cafeteria have a similar look and feel as the original, and I genuinely appreciate that. It is important for creating that Night Court atmosphere, and this is one of the things that this show gets right. Number 3. The theme. For those who were worried, the show still keeps its original 80s era opening theme, and like on the original show, you see it after a cold open. While it's definitely a shorter, sanitized version of the melody, where the bass guitar isn't slapping like it should, at least they still used it. If they didn't, I think it would have been a major issue, as the Night Court theme is probably one of the 80s best. Number 4. Melissa Rauch. To be quite honest, I've never been a big fan of the Bernadette character on The Big Bang Theory, as she always spoke in this weird and forcibly stuffy tone. On this show, though, I'm happy to report that she drops that funny voice and just talks like a grown woman. I also think that her acting here is perfectly fine, and that her scenes with John Larroquette have a decent flow. Overall, I think that she's a decent actress, and I was even pleasantly surprised by her. She didn't annoy me, as I had initially anticipated. Number 5. IP respect. Beyond the sets, I don't feel that the show is trying to take a dump on its past like many revivals do these days. Perhaps it's because John Larroquette is one of the producers, perhaps for other reasons, but at least the show isn't actively disrespecting its IP or its viewers. While this type of respect should be common practice for any IP revival, these days, for some reason, it's somehow an exception and not the rule. Well, that was the good. Now let's talk about the bad. Number 1. Ensemble cast. Even though the show is called Night Court, it really doesn't dwell too much on the law itself. Instead, it's always been about entertaining viewers. The original show was able to accomplish this by boasting a very solid cast of actors, the type that were memorable and had an immediate screen presence. From Harry Anderson to Marky Post to Richard Moll to Charles Robinson, every one of these actors absolutely shined in their roles, and they all had great on-screen chemistry together. As far as I could tell, this new cast, with the exception of Melissa Rauch and original cast member John Larroquette, didn't leave that type of impression on me. While India de Beaufort, Kapil Talwalkar, and Lacretta are serviceable enough in their roles, I think all three will really have to step up their game in coming episodes for this show to work. In fact, I believe that how this new ensemble cast performs together will ultimately determine if this show can maintain a real audience over time. Now, I know some of you will probably tell me that I'm being overly critical, and that a cast like this needs time to find its collective footing, but that brings me to my next point. Number 2. Lack of time. Back in the 80s, it actually took the original Night Court a few seasons to perfect its cast and even the show's writing. Unfortunately, in our day and age, this show may not have that type of luxury. In the 80s, there were 3 major networks competing for viewers' time, but today, there are hundreds of networks, dozens of streamers, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, gaming, and the list goes on. These days, in most cases, it's either sink or swim right out the gate. Now, I am aware that the new show premiered to solid ratings, probably based on its IP name recognition alone. The real question, though, is how many viewers will keep watching over time, and that has yet to be determined. Also, another challenge is that by billing this as a sequel series, viewers of the original show tuning in will offer it less of a grace period. Number 3. Dan Fielding. As much as I like seeing John Larroquette again in this role, I do have some reservations about the certain creative choices the writers have taken with his character. For starters, when Harry Stone's daughter Abby visits him, it's implied that Dan lost touch with Harry over the years, and it seemed like he had never met Abby. Given the many years that Harry and Dan worked together and that they were seemingly good friends, it seems a bit odd that there wouldn't be any contact between them during so many years. Not to mention that based on Melissa Rauch's age, it seems even odder that he wouldn't seem to even know about her. I realize that the writers probably felt that having these two meet for the first time on screen was better for comedic effect, but I would have taken a more realistic creative route. Also, on the original show, Dan was the douchey, womanizing prosecutor. Here he's more of a grumpy public defender. I mean, at least he's still kind of a douche, which is good, but it feels like the show is trying to present him in a more positive light. Unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure that it's true to his character. You could claim that perhaps Dan Fielding has possibly matured over the years, or that his character is being redeemed and given his age. I suppose I could possibly accept that explanation. For now. Number 4. Tone. While this new show has instances where some wacky things are happening, which is good, I didn't feel like it was as edgy or as amusing as the original. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if I put an original episode from the 80s on right now, I would probably find it legitimately funnier. The original felt more grounded, with many instances of raunchiness and innuendos. This new show, much like its updated theme song, seems more sanitized, likely because everybody is offended by everything today, so networks like NBC can't take the same type of creative risks that they used to. And perhaps this is what really holds the show back, but we'll have to see how things develop. At the end of the day, as far as revivals and sequels of a nostalgic IP go, it's not the worst I've seen. While it's certainly not a top-tier revival like Cobra Kai, it's also not a bottom-of-the-barrel one like Quantum Leap. For now, the new Night Court is just okay, but it's certainly not a disaster. If you're looking for a new 30-minute nostalgic sitcom, I suppose it's just serviceable enough. With that being said, since until now it seems like the showrunners have had fairly good intentions, I'm willing to continue to give it a chance. As opposed to what some people think, I don't just automatically dislike things. I'm not rooting for the new Night Court to fail either, but it does need to improve in order to get a better review from me. I don't know if it's a show that I will be regularly posting about, but if I see a significant improvement, I will consider making another video about it. What did you think about the Night Court sequel series? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.